Initiate your sonic metamorphosis.
Broadcasting from the Millennium Student Center here at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. This is UMSL Student Radio. The U.
The opinions expressed on this program are the views of the host and not necessarily the views of the University of Missouri St. Louis or this station.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another installment of That Science and Nature Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Howard, and this week joining me we have Younas Khan.
Hello.
And Sebastian Forward.
Hello, hello.
So this week we're going to be talking all about light pollution. We're going to be talking about a Mars reality TV show hosted by William Shatner. We'll get to that in a moment. We're going to be talking about lots of rats in New York City. Our topic of the show this week is going to be all about Earth Day, because Earth Day is this coming Saturday, so we'll have a nice, fun topic of the show for that. But to start out, our first news story, this comes to us from the Smithsonian Magazine on smithsonianmagazine.com, not .org. This article is all about why it's time for a worldwide Lights Out program. So at the Smithsonian exhibit, they currently have a Lights Out themed exhibit where it's sort of depicting all the aspects of getting rid of light pollution. So this is removing, obviously, or dimming rather, city lights, lots of excess source of lights to be able to connect humans more thoroughly and originally as they were to the sky. Since with the amount of light pollution we have with growing cities and urban sprawl, we don't see the night sky as much as we used to. There's lots of different components of this article which we'll break down, but I want to start out with just a general question is, when was the last time either of you saw the night sky?
I will say, growing up in New Mexico in a, at least on the other side of a very large mountain from a large city, I was in a place where there were basically no people, and as a result, I grew up having unlimited access to the stars and the night sky. So I was actually used to that up until moving to various cities, and now here, where stars are much more hard to find than I'm used to.
And for me, I think it was more than a year ago when I visited Pakistan. So basically, my family lives in this very urban setting where there is literally no light pollution, and I could literally see the stars and the moon and everything like in a very clear way, like ever since like there would be little dark in the evening. And the sight was so beautiful and so clear that I could take I basically took a picture of the Orion Nebula, and I still have it somewhere in my phone. And ever since I came back, I haven't been able to see like the night sky because we literally live close to the city and light pollution.
Yeah, for me, I honestly don't remember the last time. It might have been when I was like 12 or 13 and at summer camp in like upstate New York. It was like an environmental camp of all things.
City boy over here.
Yeah, well, upstate New York. It's not like I was in like New York City. But yeah, it was like an environmental camp when I was like, again, 12 or 13. And that's the last time I remember like looking up and seeing the night sky. Most of the time, you know, in suburbia or in cities that I lived in, like I just can't for the life of me remember. There might be a time or two. It's just like the fact that that's the last prominent time. That's what I think about.
I'll say just a year ago, I was doing field work in southern New Mexico, and for the most part, if you've never been, there is basically nothing in southern New Mexico. There are not really many people. The cities are very far away from each other, and I just so happen to be like probably 4 or 5 hours from any group of people or city or anything like that, and the moon wasn't even out on this day, and just the stars were so bright that you could like see the whole landscape, and like you could go for a hike just in the starlight, and that is not something you can get around cities anymore.
Yeah, that's really cool. I have a vivid memory of when I was like 11. This isn't Starry Sky related, but we did like a night hike where we turned off our flashlights and went for a hike in the woods, you know, once your vision eventually adapts, which is actually really fun. I mean, kind of scary as a 11-year-old.
Yeah,
but once
it's great.
you get into it, it's like, oh, this is really cool. We can actually see in the dark, and there's all of these things outside that aren't, you know, horrible.
Yeah, and this article has some very interesting statistics and some sad ones too. Like 1/3 of the human population, they cannot see the Milky Way galaxy in the sky because they live too close to the city lights. And this is kind of sad because Milky Way is such a beautiful spectacle to see at night. It kind of takes you to a whole another dimension when you look at it, because you kind of feel like it's the center of a bigger structure or bigger thing. But most of the people, they haven't looked up and saw the Milky Way, the stripe of the Milky Way. So it's kind of sad, and I think things need to be done about it.
There's also a very notable impact on human health, and not even talking about nature-wise. As far as our sleep cycles go, they are incredibly dependent on, seeing sunset, sunrise, like being exposed to light during the day, and like total darkness at night. And the studies have found that people living in cities have dramatically disrupted circadian rhythms and, ability to fall asleep. And it pretty much all gets screwed up when you live in a place that's kind of 24/7 illuminated like that.
That is so true. And I was kind of surprised that this light pollution has more negative impacts than I initially thought on humans, on animals, on plants even. So every year, millions of migratory birds, they die because of light pollution, and it's kind of surprising, but mainly because they are attracted towards the light and they cannot see the path, or they cannot basically navigate the path because of the lighting, and that's why they get distracted and they crash into the buildings. So I think this is very sad, and light pollution has more negative impacts on us, on nature overall, than most of us can think of.
Yeah, the article lists a lot of different aspects of negative impacts on animals. So the ones they give, obviously, like Younas mentioned, are birds. Birds navigate, and when there's lots of bright lights, they can run into things. And usually when a bird hits an object, it usually breaks its neck or severely injures itself to the point where it can't fly, and it's pretty much gone. The thing about plants is really interesting. I didn't know plants really needed that much darkness, because the article mentions that plants need light for photosynthesis. It's like the major component, but actually plants need the dark more than you would think. What is the nuance with the dark, Sebastian?
A lot of plants use the time of day. They can actually measure. This is all by chemicals that don't have watches or anything, but they can measure the amount of hours of daylight versus night. And this will actually determine when they flower. A lot of plants will flower in the fall when the daylight starts to get lower, or they'll flower in the spring when the days start to get longer. And if you shine lights on them, you can screw that up. And if you've ever seen poinsettia around Christmas time, people get those to bloom by messing with the light schedules on those plants. And I've actually seen it. They have to put black tarps over them in the city when they're growing them in greenhouses, because even just the diffuse light from city lights will mess up their blooming schedules, and you wouldn't be able to get your Christmas poinsettia. But it's just an example. There's a lot of much worse things that light pollution. Yeah. That is the least of everyone's worries as far as light pollution goes.
Yeah, they also mention wallabies in Australia messing with their reproductive cycles, as well as coral off the coast of countries. They're kind of messing up when they're sort of going into releasing their eggs and sperm so they can reproduce. And corals are super important, and they're kind of slowly dying away for multiple reasons. But light pollution is one of those reasons I did not think about.
They also count the phases of the moon. If you just think of little corals, they are not I guess they're very simple creatures, but they can keep track of the moon, and they all release their eggs on the same night every year, and every one of that species will know to release it on that day of the year. And if you shine too much artificial light on them, you can get the corals confused.
That is so true. And I think one positive thing that comes to mind in this gloomy scenario is that all of us and every one of us can do things to reduce light pollution. And it doesn't require very drastic or very extreme measures. So basically, if we can somehow get rid of the unwanted lights, or the lights can be turned on and off automatically, for example, using motion sensors in our houses and in the streets as well. That can reduce the light pollution by a significant amount. So I feel like a lot of it will boil down to like how effectively the general public can be educated about it, and of course government also has a role to play in it.
I think if everybody just wants to kind of, take note around your house, do you really need to leave your porch light on all night? Is that really helping you at all? And I think most of the case it's not really. We're just kind of used to leaving things on. So take note of that and turn off anything that's producing light outside of your house when you don't particularly need it.
Yeah, the article also mentions LED lights, so as an alternative that we can kind of shift towards being a better source of light that doesn't use as much energy, so it's not, wasting as much energy and, producing as much light pollution, which is going to negatively impact both ourselves and the environment. The one thing that the article kind of mentions that I think is very uplifting is that unlike a lot of other types of pollution, light pollution can actually be kind of fixed very quickly. It's not something like it's going to take years and years to get rid of all the trash out of the ocean or get rid of all the toxic pollutants. It's going to be something that, if most of us made these shifts, we actually could transition away from the problems that light pollution has caused. So that was kind of a cool piece of hope that the article ends on. And as I live and breathe, we have our fourth castmate, Becky Hanses O'Neill. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Sorry for my lateness. Had a bit of a bee emergency.
Bee emergency. Do you want to tell the audience what the bee emergency was?
Yeah, so Jeremy and I work in a lab. We study bumblebees, and the bees, there are about 5 of them foraging in my big foraging box when I went to class. And then when I came back, there were about 50. So I hadn't planned to deal with 50 bees. And I think they dipped into their caffeine stores. They were buzzing around like crazy.
Okay.
Because I give them caffeine. But that is the
You're
topic.
drugging the bees.
Yes. Topic for another show. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. Well, you're just in time, so we wrapped up the light pollution article. So now we're going to talk all about reality TV.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed. All right, so this is not an article I thought I was going to run into when I did my research for the week. But on Gizmodo, apparently there is a new Mars survival reality TV show hosted by William Shatner. And the premise is basically this, that they are going to round up a bunch of celebrities. They have not yet named the celebrities, to partake in a bunch of Mars environmental condition related challenges to simulate what life would be on like Mars. I'm assuming there's not that many details on the article, but I'm assuming there's going to be like competitions to do things like maybe build structures or find, suitable water or whatever the challenges may be. And I'm assuming that people are going to get eliminated most likely. And as reality TV goes, there usually is drama, which drama for an interstellar show is kind of an interesting concept in and of itself. But those are kind of the details so far. William Shatner is going to be hosting it, and it's going to premiere in June. So I'm not a big reality TV person, but does the concept of having an extraterrestrial sort of reality TV show pique any interest about Mars?
I will say this just seems like Among Us in real life, and I think watching a bunch of celebrities like I guess theoretically like killing themselves by accidentally opening an airlock door or something, and theoretical Mars survival. I think this does sound very entertaining, at least as far as reality TV goes.
Okay.
Is that a rule? That if you do something dumb like that, you're out?
It should be. I hope so.
We're merely speculating about
so,
this.
like, if they're trying to survive on a Mars habitat, they better get eliminated if they get sucked out a window or if they, drink the bleach by accident. There needs to be amusing death penalties for celebrities who screw up their life support. What do you think?
I really want to know who these celebrities are going to be. Just like, I want to see like Dwayne The Rock Johnson just like open the air lash and they're just sucked out into space or whatever, in this reality situation.
Yeah, do we have a lineup of who we'd want to see? I'm kind of curious.
Ooh.
I don't think so as of yet.
Oh, that's I'm trying to think.
Oh, I can see his face. The guy from The Martian.
Yes. Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, yeah.
Matt Damon. Yes. I think he is thoroughly prepared. He might be too prepared for this task.
Matthew McConaughey as well from the Interstellar.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Ooh, Sigourney Weaver. I would want her on my team.
That's true. So this is the winning team, and then the Kardashians and everybody else goes on the competition team, and we see how well they do.
I kind of find it interesting how, like, in every scenario, whether serious or entertainment point of view, these celebrities, they kind of become, like, relevant. So I don't know how they will actually simulate the environment, but in many of these TV shows, and especially in movies, like there was a movie called Don't Look Up recently, where they basically hired a comet scientist to basically simulate an actual comet and to create a comet, like a theoretical comet, so that everything they describe in the movie is accurate. So I don't know, we don't have much details on this, if in this reality show they will try to go like very scientific way, try to simulate things very accurately, but I kind of am skeptic about that. They will try to keep the entertainment aspect in mind first and foremost. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was Googling Mars conditions because my first thought was, well, how are they going to simulate the conditions on Mars? And my following thought was, well, what are the conditions on Mars? So just after a quick Google search, the average temperature on Mars is about minus 80 degrees. So that's very cold
Very
for those
cold.
out there. Very,
Yeah.
very cold. Most of us don't experience anything even remotely close to that. Let's see, what else is there? The atmosphere is thin, has low pressure, which changes considerably from day to day, from season to season, from place to place. The surface is covered mostly by reddish rocks, sand, and soil, with some patches of green, and is cratered by impacts and eroded by windstorms. Mars has 4 seasons, and a day is slightly longer than 24. Yeah, and a day is slightly longer than 24 hours, but a year is almost twice as long as Earth's.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like they could do something. There are actually Mars simulation bases. Like, I think they're in Hawaii, right?
There's one in Texas, but I know there's also moon simulations as well. So
Yeah.
I feel like the people that actually are getting paid to be part of those simulations, if they read this, probably collectively rolled their eyes. Since we have people doing the real thing.
Yes, as this is already an event, just not with celebrities, with researchers, or at least people who are very dedicated to Mars, I guess, like cosplay. I don't know. I don't know how this falls in entertainment hobbies wise.
Yeah, doing a little research before talking on the show, the Mars simulation in Texas, they're going to be there for a whole year, and that's starting this summer. So I wonder if that's
Interesting.
on purpose, like lining up with the reality show.
Yeah. If you guys had a chance to participate in the actual Mars mock-up at the NASA Johnson Space Center, would you be up for it or no, and why?
Oh, I've done field work, and that's like field work extreme. I don't think I need to do that.
Wait, so you're asking, would we partake in the simulation, or would we go on the reality show?
Or would we go to Mars?
Oh, I mean the NASA simulation.
You have to answer all of the
NASA
questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll say yes to the simulation, no to Mars, and for the reality TV show, it depends how much I'm getting paid, I guess.
I don't want to be famous. I don't want
I mean,
to be
I'll
on
just be a
TV for
nobody
that.
on the show. That's fine. No one will know me. They'll pay me. I'll get eliminated. I'll leave.
I'm sure they will pay more than what graduate students get paid.
That. Oh, you're right. You're right.
I mean, would you guys embarrass yourself on a reality TV show for a bunch of money if no one knew who you were?
Depends.
You know how much research you can do with that reality TV money? I have an idea, guys.
Okay.
Let's have a reality TV show.
Oh, yeah. Someone's gonna have to film that and edit that. It's gonna be a nightmare in of itself.
Yeah, that's true.
You're a wonderful producer. I believe in you.
Yes. Go on.
I'll just quit my full-time job as a graduate student teacher or TA and make a
Over the summer, we
documentary.
can
Yeah.
make a Netflix series out
I'm
of it.
sure my PhD advisor would love that idea.
I've definitely, I've thought after watching The Martian, which is of course about a botanist on Mars doing awesome science things, strongly contemplated the question of, would I go to Mars? But also, I am not an engineer botanist. I'm a botanist. So my qualifications would be much less useful in Mars, like engineering based survival, than in field survival here on Earth. So I feel like I might want to go to Mars for the novelty, but I probably wouldn't be the best person to take to Mars.
My thoughts are far in the future. If I had my dream job, it would be like planet designer for a terraforming company. That would be cool.
Awesome.
What about you, Younas?
I'm an astronomer, so I'm ready for it.
You're ready to get on the spaceship.
Yes.
Excellent. You can zoom in from there.
Nice. All right. We'll transition now to our last article. So this is a little more serious topic than reality TV. This is all about New York City and all of the rat problems they have, which in and of itself is not a new topic or problem that New York City is facing. With the article, this is from NPR, good old NPR. This is New York City has appointed what they are calling a rat czar, and her job will be a tall ask, is the article's title. And basically, the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, hired this woman, her name is Kathleen Cordy, to basically be the quote-unquote rat czar and more or less deal with the rat problem. And the article basically goes on to talk about the complications with dealing with rats in a city, and what her sort of plan of attack is, dealing with it overall. And the one interesting thing I found to start off our little talk on this is that the rats went down because of the pandemic. People were not eating out and going to restaurants and stores and stuff and, consuming food and, leaving waste everywhere. But after the pandemic ended, it actually spiked to levels higher than pre-pandemic.
Interesting.
So that was a surprise to me. I wasn't entirely sure why that happened because, more people came back out, but did we come out with the same force?
And what are the absolute numbers here that they're talking about?
Just looking at the graph. So in 2020, and this is by 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I'm kind of eyeballing it on the graph. So in 2019, it was roughly, I want to say 117,000. And this is what's the X, the Y axis of the graph? Number of rat sightings, in New York City. Oh, okay. So roughly 17,000 in 2019, and then it's I want to say maybe 16,000 in 2020, and then in 2021, 2022, I would say it's 23,000, 25,000.
25,000 rat sightings. I guess that seems low, but I just want to know who's reporting rat sightings in New York, because I think you can always report a rat sighting, almost at any point in New York. I wonder how they collected this data, but I do believe that the number changes over time.
Yeah, and this could be a behavioral thing. It could be a how they're measuring it kind of thing. Because let's say there wasn't enough food, a whole bunch of them died during the pandemic. And then suddenly we give them a bunch of food. That population growth rate is going to be really high because there's no competition. So they're going to shoot up really fast and then they're going to level out. The other thing could be behavior. Rats don't live that long, so these are naive rats, presumably, a good chunk of them. So maybe more people just see them because they're naive. They don't know people are going to get them.
But did the rats have competitors before the pandemic? Wouldn't it be the same scenario, both before and after?
No, because this is a density-dependent... Okay, I'm getting...
Yes, you need to explain this.
The competition is other rats. So they're essentially... They were at the height that their population could be. There's enough food for everybody. Then all that food goes away, a bunch of them die. And then afterwards, there's a bunch of food available again, so the population growth rate can go really, really fast.
Okay.
I think the article kind of mentions that too. When the restaurants closed, there was less amount of food. Many of the rats, they had to migrate to areas where they could find more rats, so maybe to suburban areas of New York. And that is basically the reason that they cite for the lower number of rat sightings. And then when the restaurants opened, I don't know what communication mechanism they used, but they somehow came back. I don't know if they were the same rats or they were basically overpopulated, the population just jumped up. But yeah, there was a significant increase after the pandemic was gone.
I'd like to bring up, just some basic fundamentals of ecology here when we're talking about city rats, because it's it is an ecosystem. It's just a really sad ecosystem that has like 3 animals being like humans, pigeons, and rats, and that's like pretty much the only thing that you have living in these urban environments. And you know, they have a food source, which is just all the junk that we let out and all the stuff that we spill and the garbage and whatever, and then the rats can reach a maximum population based on that. And in a normal ecosystem, they would have predators which eat the rats and, you know, would keep their population really low. But in the city, there really isn't much of a natural predator. Like there's a few, maybe a couple predatory birds and maybe foxes in like suburban areas, but in the real urban areas, the only thing keeping the rats in check are other rats and like people trapping them. But that's kind of also a very difficult task because we're talking about like millions of rats.
How about cats?
Yeah, that's true, but your cat population has to be high enough to really make a dent. So I'm sure in some areas it is, but you know, they kind of have to have like thousands of cats to manage millions of rats. And yeah,
I remember years ago there was a story on NPR. I don't remember which radio program it was, but basically it was a bunch of rat killing enthusiasts who like made a club in New York City, and they train their dogs to like sniff out and kill rats, and they go out at night every day of the week and go kill rats, and this is their hobby.
That's quite an interesting hobby.
There's a barn hunt around here if you wanted to do it. They don't kill the rats, but your dog has to find them in little containers and bales of hay.
Interesting.
This is a whole underground.
So I was wondering, like, if this rat problem is completely taken care of, say in New York, what are going to be some of the negative implications of this? Because we know that, like, as Sebastian mentioned, this is an ecosystem, and the rats might be eating some of the, say, bugs and stuff. So how it can impact the city negatively? And do you think there should be a strategy for that as well?
Yeah, I think you've hit a main point. And there's actually a researcher who is an UMSL alumni that studies this very thing. Her name is Danielle Lee. She's a researcher over at SIU Edwardsville. And I went to a talk that she did, and she addressed exactly what you're talking about, Younas. So if you don't get rid of the food waste being improperly stored, some other animal is going to come in. So it could be mice, roaches, I don't know, pigeons. I'm sure there's other things in New York. So yeah, basically, if the rats go away, that's a wonderful ecological hole that needs filled. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I feel like it's kind of impossible unless you add a predator that can reproduce itself. Like it's kind of the important thing about predators is that they can reproduce to track the numbers of their prey, because you can't. I guess you could try and hire more rat catchers, but we're not that good at that activity compared to all of the animals that eat rats. So it's a lot easier if you can add a predator to a system or remove the food, but you can't just remove the rats because the rats will make more rats, as they're really good at that. That's like their whole thing.
All right. Well, we're not going to solve the rat problem, but an interesting conversation nonetheless. All right, we will be right back after this short break to talk all about Earth Day. Stay tuned.
Music.
Broadcasting from Millennium Student Center at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and online at umslradio.org. We are the voice of UMSL. We are UMSL Radio.
And we're back. So our topic of the show this week is all about Earth Day. So this coming Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, is Earth Day. And something I did not know about Earth Day every year is that there actually is a theme, something that I feel like I should have known, but now I do. This year's theme is called Invest in Our Planet. And this is all about, the idea of we want to put in valuable time to our planet to preserve it, to, in the long run, have the planet survive as long as we can for future generations to come. Some fun facts about Earth Day. I did a little bit of research before writing my questions for our discussion. Is this holiday was originally founded in 1970. Originally, there was a senator from Wisconsin named Senator Gaylord Nelson, and he basically had an issue with all of the oil spills that were going off the coast of Santa Barbara, California. And he didn't feel that anyone was doing anything about these spills, and he wanted to kind of promote some action to, have people be more conscientious of the environment and that we were killing it, essentially. So basically, he, through his what's the word I'm looking for? Through his efforts, activism. Thank you. He kind of inspired a bunch of students, and this is kind of during the Vietnam era where there's a lot of sort of anti-government, anti-war sentiment going on, to kind of rally these individuals to get attention to this issue of water pollution and ultimately air pollution. And eventually he got other senators on board, and they were able to start the first official Earth Day in 1970, which from there it's kind of grown and grown and grown. It's led to a lot of great things like the establishment of the EPA, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and ultimately it's become sort of a worldwide phenomenon that I don't remember what the actual number of countries is. It's 100 and something countries. I'll find the statistic in a second. But a lot of countries celebrate Earth Day, so it's not just a United States thing. So really cool little piece of history there. So to start out our talking points for this, I want to just ask, when did you guys start doing stuff on Earth Day? Like, what was the earliest memory you have of Earth Day? Like, doing something related to it or finding out about it or something of that nature? Putting everyone on the spot. So.
Yes. I think I remember as a kid, they brought in, like, presenters from a local wildlife sanctuary and did, like, a presentation of the tropical rainforest with like a jingle that has stuck in everyone I know's minds for the past like 20 years since this occurred. Okay. And they like walk around with a snake and let everybody touch it. And that is what I'm talking about as far as like youth education. That is how you get people interested, is you put a tank with a like horseshoe crab in it in front of them and let them like look at it.
Wait.
What is this jingle?
Yeah, will you sing us the song?
Oh god. It's more of the jingle. I don't remember the song.
I need you to try and hum or do the jingle.
It's all about the tropical rainforest. It's
okay.
Like got some symbols in there somewhere, but yes, that was what I can remember for Earth Day activities, and I will say it. I know a lot of biologists came out of that group of nerds, so I think they probably did a decent job.
I don't have any specific memories. Maybe like doing a coloring project where we drew a planet. I lived in very rural places, so I do remember Ag Day, but I don't remember Earth Day.
I personally have no recollection of doing any such activity. And I mean, I basically grew up in Pakistan, and in the smaller countries, although the impact of the environment is more on them in most of the cases, but unfortunately the efforts that needs to be taken to educate the students, they're not like at par. So I haven't done anything yet, unfortunately.
Okay, I found the statistic from earlier. It's 141 countries and counting celebrate Earth Day. So nothing that, is crucial information now to know. But like Becky, I actually don't really have a specific memory about Earth Day. I just remember doing things in school, like hands-on activities where we'd make like a craft, or we'd kind of like go outside and like, plant some plants or something like that. Like little like kind of cute things to do to keep you engaged, which I'm not in any way dismissing. Those are all great things to do. Getting hands-on with nature is probably one of the most powerful things you can do as a small child to connect. But
it's no Halloween as far as engagement goes. Yeah.
There's not quite as much mischief, on Earth Day. Like,
yeah.
oh, we're planting some trees. Those kids up to no good,
Better than President's Day. Still ranks higher in my memory. Not to make fun of President's Day or anything.
So I mentioned a bunch of things that came out of Earth Day, like EPA, Clean Water, Clean Air Act. Overall, and sort of your, I guess, gut feeling. You can also give me, statistics and analytics if you have them. Do you feel like Earth Day has made things better, or have things gotten a lot worse since Earth Day's inception? What's your kind of take on that?
I think that Earth Day was really impactful when it like came out in the 70s. I think this we're kind of talking about the original environmentalist movement in the 70s. And, shout out to Richard Nixon, the person who you would not expect to get a shout out from the environmentalists. But, I know we'll talk about it later, but this stuff didn't used to be political. Like, Richard Nixon created some of the best, environmental programs that we still use now as a result of kind of popular support back in the day. Like, everybody... some of these things were contentious, but there was enough support that, we got the EPA, we got, Clean Water Act, a number of different things happened in the early days of Earth Day that really made a difference. But I think the impact has waned as all of these things kind of come up against brick walls of corporations and legislature and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's hard to attribute the things that have gotten better to Earth Day specifically, but I was thinking about this more like, how many thousands of classes, at least in the United States, of little kids do you have going to a park or their playground and picking up microplastics and things like that? Because that's kind of an easy activity you can get everybody to do. There's lots of Earth Day cleanup days where you go to a park or a beach. And just taking all that improperly disposed trash and properly disposing it probably is pretty helpful, just in a numbers game.
I'd say also just teaching people wise. It's impossible to quantify the value of scientific education.
I totally agree with Becky. There are around 1 billion people who celebrate the World Earth Day every year, and it's a huge number. So I feel the awareness part is okay, it is good in fact, but the question is whether people have contributed practically to some causes that benefit the environment and the earth. And again, it's difficult to quantify, but the way the issue has been politicized in the past few years, I feel like the number of people that take part in this activity or on this day, the impact should have been much more prominent and much more visible. And again, I don't have any statistics for that, but this is just my feeling or my general understanding.
So I feel like we should just dive right into it, and Sebastian, alluded to it earlier. Why is the environment a political issue now in these days? Why is it controversial? We mentioned Richard Nixon, who is a Republican president and was a heavy, spearheader of these environmental causes, which is that's a big deal for American history, but also again just for progressing, the EPA establishment and all that stuff. Why is it so politicized now? Why is just nature controversial? I don't know. We'll just say it. Why is nature controversial in some ways? What do you think it is?
I think the biggest part of it comes down to, a piece of legislature called Citizens United, which basically allows companies to pay politicians to vote in a certain way. And when that was legalized, and it's been a long running trend, it basically allows the most successful company to pay the government or the politicians to stop enforcing laws that hurt that business. And unfortunately, for a very long time, the fossil fuel industry were and still are multi-trillion-dollar companies. Multi-trillion-dollar companies are bigger than most countries. And when you have these companies that produce all of our gasoline, all our plastics, all of our stuff like that, they can pay the government to stop enforcing environmental restrictions. And I think that kind of founded the beginning of the climate denial and stuff like that. And it's kind of been picked up and carried as just all these other anti-environmental things that have just kind of been swept into company policy. But I think it's the companies that kind of started it by just paying people to not change the things that they profited off of.
I'd say there's another part to this, because if you look at the history of the United States and where funding for environmental conservation came from, it was originally hunters and farmers. And we can see that in fishermen. and women. And anyway, fisher people, hunter people, all that. And now it's a little bit different. We're seeing this big shift. So, I'm going to say I'm not going to mention the legislation because I'm going to say the wrong name. But basically, any equipment used for hunting and fishing has an extra tax on it. It's a special tax that occurs before it even gets to the shelves at Bass Pro Shops or anything like that. That is used to fund a lot of conservation programs in the United States. And then if you look at other hunting type organizations like Ducks Unlimited, they are responsible for purchasing lots of wetland land and making sure that's never developed. So who was doing conservation in the early 1900s in the United States was so different than what's happening now. We're seeing a decline in people actually taking up hunting or purchasing those things. You're getting a lot more hiking, birding. So in addition to things going on at the, congressional level, we have a very big divide that's come between just individuals and how they think about conservation, where, hunting and fishing, that's the bad guys, or farming, it's all industrial farming, those are the bad guys, when it's really farmers and ranchers have a lot to do with soil conservation districts. So we have this wedge in the United States that really shouldn't be there.
I feel like those are very good points. One of the reasons I can think of, why this issue got politicized, is that people, especially the younger generations, at any given period in time, they weren't given these opportunities to accept this scientific process. So anything that science suggests, unfortunately, many of the people, they kind of automatically assume that it is some kind of like conspiracy, or it is something that will take our nature, I mean to say like our original state of living away from us. And I think this state of mind is kind of very detrimental to the efforts of, conservation of the environment and the earth. So I don't know, like we as a scientist, we have this role and this duty to make the younger generations believe in science. And this component has been missing. That is why there is this big divide between societies. Like you will either see people who are pro-science or who are not, simply.
I think another big part that's, I'll say, has kind of been the case for all of human history, and we're just kind of dealing with now, is that, a lot of things that are good for people are not good for nature, and a lot of the legal options that would be best for preserving nature, contradict people's like way of life, or their occupation involves extracting resources from nature, or utilizing natural resources. That's where most of the things we have come from nature in some way or another. And unfortunately, the environmental stuff tends to stall when it means ending like a whole field of jobs, like the coal mining, how we got our energy for a very long time, has only recently been phased out because solar panels are cheaper. Like at this point, it is straight up cheaper to make solar panels and make solar energy than it is to make coal, and that's why coal is finally being phased out in most places. Unfortunately, it wasn't phased out because it was terrible for the environment and because it was leading to pollution of like air, water, and CO2. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff falls short, is just where it is economically really bad for a bunch of people to do the environmentally right thing. And I think that's kind of where we stumble as a species, is making the hard decisions that people really don't want to make. And I don't know, can't really fault people for not wanting to just lose their job for the environment. But unfortunately, that's kind of where the greater regulation is required, and that's when people get kind of mad.
So bringing this back to Earth Day a little bit, not that we're not having a good conversation, but for the topic, we mentioned, the hunters, the corporations, the businesses. In terms of Earth Day itself, is that more of a holiday for the people, championed by the people, or should we have the businesses, the government be involved with this? Should it be an everybody's holiday?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a bigger. We've seen that in other ways, like the commercialization of supporting LGBTQ plus rights has also been in this, like, hey, are you serious about being supportive, or are you just trying to get more people to buy your stuff? And those are probably not mutually exclusive, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely the greenwashing phenomenon of you put your like fossil fuel based, bird killing material in a green bottle and then say it's like environmentally friendly, and then you sell more because people tend to believe it sometimes. And I think as a biologist, every day is kind of Earth Day. You can't really escape the idea of seeing, environmental problems when you're kind of steeped in it for long enough. So it is easy to be cynical when you see, companies doing marketing campaigns about environmentalism, and I think it's good to be skeptical whenever you see people advertising things that they might not be supporting behind the scenes.
What about on the governmental level, in terms of their involvement with Earth Day?
I mean, that already kind of happens at wildlife refuges, national parks, that kind of thing. I think it'd be silly to say, Yellowstone National Park, you can't do anything for Earth Day.
This is our holiday. Step off.
And that's like most of the people that are doing the applied science on the ground in the United States or maybe at least half of them are probably federal or state employees. So I think it's probably pretty important, especially since they also have extra funding for education, for them to be really heavily involved.
Mm-hmm. I think, it's kind of amongst those things of the main problem is just that it's Earth Day instead of like Earth Month, and that like people actually know more about the subject as opposed to just this brief little celebration. But any attention is good. And
yeah, and I found, like, you might worry that, oh, these are federal employees, maybe they're being influenced by, if it's in Yellowstone, that's Wyoming, maybe Wyoming senators or something are influencing. They're not. I mean, I've had to work with a lot of folks that are doing environmental education at the agency level, and they're really not getting interfered with.
Yeah. Typically, people who end up in these kind of jobs are, once again, people who want to preserve and protect the things that are in nature. And yeah, it's hard to escape the political conflicts and all of the other stuff that goes on when you're in the field. I know I saw that working in a like government office too. Just that, the pressures are kind of always there, and it's more about getting in the wins when you can, as opposed to I don't know, I guess
Getting
broader
losses.
issues. Yes.
Yeah. It's like bottom-up influence. Like, you're more likely to get complaints from local people that visited your education booth than you are from, like, your state senator.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so as we're getting close to wrapping up the show, Earth Day moving forward, it's not going to go anywhere. I hope it never does. It probably will always be a day, because that's kind of how, in my opinion, it's most poignant as a single event that kind of educates everyone, even though it would be nice if, everyone thought every day was Earth Day.
Yes. How they got away with Shark Week, I have no idea. That worked really well.
We gotta get on that, gotta get on the marketing. So, moving forward with Earth Day, are there certain issues or causes that Earth Day should maybe be championing more, or are there ones that have been underrepresented in the past? Because in Earth Day's history, as I mentioned towards the top of the start of the topic, it was mostly about oil spills and getting oil out of the water and protecting the air and all that stuff. In this day and age, what is I feel like I know the answer. The answer's pretty obvious, but what is the big issue, or what are lesser known issues besides the one I know everyone's going to say immediately that Earth Day could champion?
I mean, I presume you mean climate
That
change.
is what I mean, because I knew everyone's going to say that immediately.
This is actually, I'm having a buzzword moment. This is another thing where I think I would use a bottom-up approach, right? It's much easier, I think, to get people interested in something of like biodiversity loss than it is climate change. But much of our biodiversity loss is caused by climate change. So I think I would go with biodiversity, honestly. Get people excited about cool bugs and plants and things, and then hit them with the climate change.
Yeah, I agree, because for me that's kind of what's really at risk, is that we're losing species to extinction and stuff like that, and you can't get those back, at least not for the most part. So I think showing people the cool things that are out there, cool plants, animals, stuff like that, and then tell them how these things are at risk. That's more accessible than climate change, which is just kind of a big, looming, scary thing, which nobody entirely understands completely, but we all know is bad. It's more accessible.
I think I will go with light pollution. We already talked about it. And I like this because everyone can do something, or, to basically mitigate the effects of light pollution. Also, I feel like I learned a lot of things today from this discussion and from the article as well, that there are certain negative aspects of light pollution. They're not like commonly known, or they're not obvious. And we kind of focus more on like how people cannot see the sky. I know that's like a good thing to point out, but the important thing would be to preserve the birds and the animals and their mating habits and all these kind of things. So I feel like light pollution would be a good thing to focus on.
Can make a year for that.
Of course.
So like a light pollution year? What do you mean make a year of that?
Yeah, they have themes. One of the years.
Oh, okay. Oh, I
Could
see,
be.
I see. Yeah.
Light pollution themed.
Okay. Yeah, my thought was going to be much more like, I guess, broad. I was just thinking about like human connection to nature, because as Younas brought up, I think when people can connect to the thing that we want to make them care about, they will then hopefully ideally care about it.
The caring about is automatic once you know it exists and
Yes.
know it's vulnerable.
Because immediately my thought was something like, oh, like other forms of alternative energy but like that's hard to connect with on like a personal level to like nuclear energy. I really feel my connection to that power source. But something like, again, light pollution is an example of like we have direct impact over that. There's a connection there. Biodiversity is something we have a direct connection to because we go out and we see nature, even if it's in our city block with rats, or out into the woods and we see owls, or different kinds of plants, all that. So there's a connection there. So that was my immediate thought. Again, there's probably a better way to market that, but human connection might be my angle there.
That's a good one.
Cool. All right. Any last thoughts on Earth Day for 2023?
It's cool, though I don't have a specific thing to celebrate other than I'm going to keep studying the pollinators.
Yeah, we keep being biologists.
Yeah, I would recommend
Nature lovers.
those of you who, wherever you live, if you're in St. Louis or you live in another city or rural area, just maybe do some Googling, see if there's any local events out there that celebrate Earth Day, whether there's like festivals or, local farms do things with produce and markets, or if there are like wildlife showings. All that stuff is usually free. I don't always know, but usually those things typically are done for public welfare to connect with nature. So maybe check out what's around you. You might find some cool stuff. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up another That Science and Nature show. Thank you so much for listening out there. I want to say thank you to Becky, thank you to Sebastian, and thank you to Younas. My name is Jeremy Howard. You've been listening to That Science and Nature show, and we are out.